So really, I think at this point, the big fork in the road is Saw as a franchise dependent upon the Jigsaw character of John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell, or is it not? Is it the concept that can move forward without him? Because if it's the former, then it just needs to die right now. And if it's the latter, then it needs something new to say. Hello and welcome to Rotten Reviews, and man, it feels good to say that again. I am back, and this time I'm going to be taking a look at the new movie Saw 10, but moreover, I'm going to be just kind of evaluating the franchise and where it stands, the things I love about it, the things I don't, and generally, is it worth pursuing any more entries in this potentially dry well? So Saw 10, directed by Kevin Croutert, who's been with us from the beginning as editor of the Saw franchise, and as director, he has now had 3 entries under his belt. And this basically follows the character of Jigsaw, played by Tobin Bell, John Kramer, who is in our timeline after the events of the first movie, but somewhere, I guess, between Saw 1 and Saw 2. And we're going along a storyline that happened while he was being diagnosed with cancer and being taken advantage of by unscrupulous actors promising a miracle cure and not delivering, leading to the vengeful, or is it vengeful, act by John Kramer, doing what he does best as he teaches them a life lesson in morality. So that's generally the plot, as much of a plot as Saw movies can do. So here's my kind of take on it, because I've never actually discussed Saw on this channel before, that's kind of odd, isn't it? But regardless, that's simply the truth of it. I loved the first movie. Through and through, every piece of it, it blew my mind. I loved the ending, the twist, everything about it was absolutely fantastic, and I consider it to be a dirty bathroom torture porn masterpiece. The other movies, I enjoy. That's one thing I want to really kind of make clear on this, is I did enjoy Saw 10. I do try and make a point of, in my reviews and in my channel and in my personal life, to simply accept what movies are trying to be at face value. Whatever they're trying to be, I kind of judge it on the merits of how well it succeeded in that. And it allows me to have a lot of fun with films that are being a little silly, being a little slapsticky, just doing what they do best and being unashamed about it, as long as they actually manage to pull it off. Now, before I continue this video, I do want to just point out that if you are enjoying this, to please click like and subscribe. It really does help me out a whole lot. And if you are wanting to support the channel further, a super thanks would not go amiss. And also consider joining the Patreon. We have Discord, watch parties, all sorts of benefits starting at only $1 a month. So check that out. Link is in the description below. So yes, I did enjoy Saw 10. But like every other entry in the franchise after the first one, I would be lying if I said that I enjoyed it nearly as much as I did that first one. Something about the magic of what was going on was just simply lost, and we wind up in almost a Flanderization of itself, where whatever this franchise has slowly become over the years and over the iterations, it's now just kind of leaning into almost self-parody that is still enjoyable, but it doesn't really feel that much like Saw. So really, I think at this point, the big fork in the road is Saw as a franchise dependent upon the Jigsaw character of John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell, or is it not? Is it the concept that can move forward without him? Because if it's the former, then it just needs to die right now. And if it's the latter, then it needs something new to say. I enjoy Tobin Bell playing John Kramer. I enjoy Tobin Bell in a lot of things. He is kind of right up there with Lin Shaye in my mind, of somebody that may not necessarily have the best acting chops around, but what he does well, and I genuinely enjoy most every performance of his. And if you want a real schlock fest of not necessarily hidden gem, but certainly one that went under the radar, you should check out the 2020 film with Tobin Bell and Lin Shaye as husband and wife, The Call. I don't know if you'll thank me for that, but just making note of it. It exists, it's out there, and if that's enough for you, like it was for me, then definitely click play. So here's the thing, the thing I loved about the first Saw movie was we really did have this interesting kind of villain who was doing the thing that the best villains on film do, and that is truly believe in what he's doing. He believes that he may not necessarily be the good guy, but that he is acting in a way that is ethical, moral, or at the very least, the ends justifying the means, and within the realms of trying to better humanity, trying to do the right thing, even if he has to do the wrong thing to get to that point.
It's all about the greater good.
The greater good.
That to me is one of the best iconic things that a villain can do, is what they believe is good. When we get into legendary villain status, that's kind of combining that sense of moral purposefulness, also tackling such gray area issues of morality with all the layers that they absolutely deserve in a way that actually brings the audience along for the ride and makes them question their own ethics. Like, maybe this villain has a point. I don't think the John Kramer character ever really got there for me. The idea of putting people through absolute hell and potential death to make them appreciate life in a way that puts them on the straight and narrow always felt a little bit, not necessarily odd, but one-dimensional to me. It was an interesting concept, but I don't think there was really any meat to it beyond that. And to me, the first film was a bit magical because it really dug into that. It really explored that. We had the two main characters that were trapped in the bathroom together, and the entirety of the movie was them going through one puzzle after another to come up with slow reveals of not just why they were there, but who they were in relation to each other, who they were in relation to themselves and the world. What ethos and morality and ethics did they actually follow that led them to the journey of being shackled in that bathroom? It was a lot of slow reveals that were built up over the course of hours and hours and hours of these puzzles that ultimately led them to the big conclusion of this is what we must do to escape. But it was a long, slow reveal of getting there with all the puzzles in place that weren't necessarily always self-mutilation. They were just simply logical points of things that they needed to overcome to get to the next truth, to get to the next reveal, to get to the point where they are able to get out of the room. Bearing in mind that Saw came out long before, and I would dare say inspired, the escape room concept for recreational purposes for everybody. But what wound up happening is, as the sequels continued coming out, as the traps and so forth became more elaborate, they basically just kind of started winding up in this situation of you have a very short window of time to mutilate yourself or you will die. And that's pretty much it. And what winds up happening is one of two things. Either more frequently than not, somebody will self-mutilate, but not make it quite in time and then die anyway. Or they will self-mutilate and then make it in time, and those people are usually the ones that move the storyline or the plot forward. So the former are fun to watch. I readily admit, I was watching Saw 10 in the theater with my wife, and we were watching this 3-minute countdown start happening where somebody had to mutilate themselves in a way that I just knew they weren't going to get out of it, but I was chuckling to myself the entire time, enjoying the hell out of the ride. But what kind of lessons are really being taught in the 3-minute time span? Say they make it out. Say they actually manage to put enough whatever viscera into the scale to tip it and have that happen before the clock runs out. At that point, what lesson have they learned? What reveal of why they were there and so forth will cause this big revelation of the appreciation of life and the goodness that can erupt from their souls from there that John Kramer has taught them? Really not much of anything. It was just survival instinct more than anything. It wasn't actually like a lesson in morality that they managed to face head on, overcome, and learn growing forward. As one-dimensional as that concept is, I just don't think that the new sequels really tackle that. Moreover, as much as I do enjoy Tobin Bell, he is showing his age, and I don't think that there's really too much that they can do about interjecting more stories in this timeline with any kind of, satisfying realism. Plus the fact that John Kramer is very set in his ways with this whole concept kind of makes it so that there's really no more room to grow. There's no more of this story that can be explored. There's no more of this morality lesson learning concept that can actually happen. John Kramer is who John Kramer is, and that's his ethos. That's it. So if we wind up getting any more movies with Tobin Bell as the Jigsaw character, that's pretty much all we're going to have. And yeah, I'll still watch them. And yeah, I'll still laugh and chuckle and enjoy the traps and people mutilating themselves. It's a good time. But this is one of the inherent problems with trying to appreciate a film on its own merits as far as it being a brainless, fun, wild roller coaster ride when the movie that started the franchise out was so thoughtful. It actually would have been better if that first movie didn't exist, just because I think I would have not have this comparison that I think that, the showing what the franchise could be by showing it what it has been. So what's the solution? I honestly think that Tobin Bell needs to step away from the franchise. We need to say goodbye to the Jigsaw character, and we need to continue on with people that are adopting his ethos, but actually looking at it with a bit more layers, more dimensions, more complications. Taking the concept as one-dimensional as it is, just like its victims, we need to eviscerate it. We need to actually really look at it and establish that morality and humanity and acts of violence and so forth are not always black and white, are not always good and evil. Sometimes there are variations. So just taking Saw 10 as an example, as a concept, and saying, what could have been done to explore that further? Well, if we didn't have the John Kramer character and we just had Amanda or somebody even brand new, whomever, a copycat, whatever you want to, take that as, and explored this concept of this predatory nature of somebody that was targeting cancer victims, promising them miracle cures, collecting a ton of money, and then skirting away with it. What if instead we had that same concept, but as we were going through the slow reveal, not the 3-minute countdown, but the 3-hour or the 3-day countdown of them establishing why they were there, so too could the villain also have their own reveals, such as, what if the money that was being used from, say, rich people from another country that only had a month to live was being weighed against the idea that this money was being used to support and feed and heal and clothe orphans in this third world developing country or whatever. If we took the concept of actually putting things on the scales aside from body parts and actually weighed the morality of what they were trying to do in a concept of where this person was also doing their ethos of the means justifying the ends, of weighing somebody that had a month to live versus a whole group of children that had years and years and decades potentially to live if they managed to get some food in their stomach. Things like that. I think that would have been a much more interesting kind of concept to explore. We would have had the victim with their reveals, we would have had the villain with their reveals, and we would have actually been tackling this moral, ethical display with the complexity that potentially it deserves, and had a thoughtful piece of a sequel to this franchise that started out with a thoughtful piece. I think that would have been an interesting thing. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, I would be happy with this franchise moving forward with just as it is, because I am going to enjoy it, but I will always mourn the potential that it had and the potential that it has, and knowing what it could be if we managed to actually separate ourselves from the quick traps, the nothing but viscera, and this singular one-dimensional philosophy and the character that is rigid in it. I'm very curious what your take is, if they match with mine. If you just don't like Saw in the first place, that's pretty valid too. Everybody has their own opinion. But please write up what you like in a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining me here. And that should about do it. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.